All right, so in today's tutorial, we're going to be tackling this really cool hard surface looking greeble kind of landscape thing. This is a redo of the past tutorial where Blender 2.81, the Voronoi node has changed, so I had to change the design. So this is kind of a re-release, but also a redesign. If you want to get this project file, you can get it in the description. Everybody on Patreon, you'll be getting that for free. If you don't know about the Patreon, I have tons of project files, exclusive tutorials, really cool things like that. Lots of cool things coming this month as well. So let's get on to how to do this tutorial. Now, a heads up, for those of you in Eevee or Cycles, it looks the same in both. The only difference is here you can see there's this black glass thing. If we hop on over to Cycles, it looks a little bit better. So the only thing that's going to be different here in Cycles or Eevee is this glass. I think it looks better in Cycles, but it's completely doable in Eevee, and we're going to be using Eevee to design this. All right, so start with a blank scene here, and we're just going to delete everything. And we're going to get a plane, scale them up, Control A, and apply that scale. So now we have just a regular plane. Let's hop over to shading and start designing this thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to click New here. We're going to make it metallic, and we're going to make it pretty dark. So now we have a dark metallic object. Now let's go ahead and start making those greebles. Shift A, we're going to add in a bump node, and we're going to add in a color ramp. Let's also get a Voronoi node right here. Now, let's change this here to 4D, change this to F2, and change this to Chebyshev. Now, make sure that you have the Node Wrangler add-on installed. We're going to hit Control T to get that texture set up, and we're going to use the object coordinate. Let's plug distance into the color ramp and plug the color into the height. Now, we're going to get this. We're going to change our scale here something pretty big, because this will be the big pieces of our scene. So we're going to go, say, right about there. All right, so now that we have this, let's go ahead and quickly set up our lighting. So we're going to go into the render view here. I'm going to go to Eevee. For you Eevee users, let's turn on ambient occlusion, bloom, and screen space reflections. Let's go to the world settings, and let's turn this black right here. Now, let's go ahead, get a light. We're going to use an area light here. And we're going to bring them up like this, bring them over here, get our light settings, and we'll say give it 500 for now. So now we got this. I'm going to hit R twice, move him around, and let's get this guy. Hit G to move him around freehand. Just move this around so you like what you see. We'll go back into rendered view and then bring that, say, 1,000 on the scale for the light. And then right over here, we're going to get another light. It's going to be a point light. Get a little bit different kind of light here, and that's going to be a very bright blue light. So let's say give it 2,000 on the brightness and scale it up. So we have this here for now. Let's say we can just make this guy much brighter to fill in this scene here, and then scale him up a little bit. So now we basically have our lighting for this scene. Now let's go ahead and start designing him some more. In the material preview, you can see it kind of looks a little bit different. That's why I went ahead and set up my lighting so we can use this as a reference. Now let's go back to shading, go to rendered view, and we can start working on this flat plane. So here on the color ramp, let's bring this over just a little bit so we can start doing this, and bring this guy over, and just about that looks pretty cool. We can use this. Now let's go ahead and get in a mix shader. Mix shader, let's take this right here, and we're going to duplicate them, and then we're going to make this part a little bit brighter, and then we're going to plug this here into the next shader socket. And you can see they're not really working together that well, but we're going to deal with that in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, we need to mess with the factor here, so let's get a color ramp right here, play with this color ramp, put that there, and then put the Voronoi texture straight into the color ramp here, and then take this color ramp, and we're going to take the linear, change it to constant, and we're going to change this to that right there. Now it looks like our bump node needs to be inverted, because right now these are jutting in. So if we just click invert, you can see them now. They're actually poking up. So you can kind of look at that difference there. So now they're poking up, which is what I want. So now we have this bottom portion, which we're going to add some detail here on the second principled node. So I'm just going to take this bump node and hit Shift D to duplicate him, add that there. And we're going to make a kind of a weird node here, weird node combination. First, let's get a brick texture. Just like this. Hit Control T, it's texture setup, get that object coordinate, and we're going to get our brick texture and plug it into the height. So now we have this, almost looks like carbon fiber. I'm going to invert the node on the bump node so it juts up again. And I'm going to bring my scale up a little bit so we can get this. Let's go ahead and play with this mortar scale, kind of like that, and then the mortar smoothness, bring it up. So now we get a little bit more bumping going on. And then you can play with the offset here, make it so that do that, and then you can play with the squash to get some pretty interesting results in this way. And honestly, I almost wanted to change there, but I went ahead and did some other weird things. First off, I actually didn't need to make that texture setup because we can just use the vector from this one to alleviate that many nodes. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to get a Voronoi texture. We're going to get this Voronoi texture right here, plug it in right there so we can start distorting this brick texture. And we're going to be actually using the distance socket here for the vector. Let's bring him down. So now we have this weirdness. We're going to change this to 4D, change this to F2, and change this to Chebyshev. Now when that happens, now we get all these cool little details down here that we didn't get originally, and then we can play with the scale here. If you want to change up the way it looks, hit W to get some randomness, hit the scale, and now we get these super cool details here on the bottom. And then looks like to me this guy's too dark, so scale him up a little bit. So now we're getting this. If you look at the original design here, you can see that it has all these little details on top. So let's go ahead and attack that. So we're going to go ahead, go back up here to this shader, and we're going to get another bump node and then plug that normal into the normal. We're going to just highlight these guys and hit G to bring it up, kind of out of the way. So we're going to take this Voronoi node here, hit Shift D, move him down, and we're going to be using the color socket right here into the height. All right, now let's take the vector of the mapping node and plug it into the vector of the texture coordinate. the Voronoi node. And there we have these. Now we're starting to get all those cool little details, and bring up the scale a lot, right about there. Get a color ramp here, do that, and then we can take this and just bring it in a little bit till we just get some of those little details, and then you can play with the scale about how you want that to kind of look, and you get some pretty cool results. So now you have these cool little details, and we bring down the strength just a little bit, and now you have those details right there at the top. All right, now what I want to do is I'm going to get a color ramp, and we're going to add some emission to these parts right over here. So let's get a color ramp right here. Let's make the linear to constant, make this portion right here, whatever color you'd like. So we're going to go with this kind of color here. Use this texture right here with this Voronoi and the brick, plug it right there, and then let's plug that into the emission of our principled. And what that's going to allow us to do is start adding some lights in our scene overall, which does this. If we were to turn on the bloom here. So if we turn on the bloom here, we're still not going to get a whole lot of light. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a brightness contrast node here, plug it right there. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring up that brightness, bring up the contrast, and now we're going to get some nice glowing. And then you can go in and change whatever color you'd like, and you get some really cool lights going on, zigzagging into your design. All right, so we finished the big part of this design here. Let's go ahead. I'm going to take this Voronoi texture and scale it up kind of like this. And then say play with the W till we get some cool stuff. Now let's actually start making a really cool composition with this render. Now I'm going to turn off bloom for now because it's a little bit distracting. So let's go ahead and make something cool. So let's take our camera and position our camera where we'd like it to be. We want it to be pointing here at the center. So Control-Alt-0 snaps that camera to view. So here on the camera focal length, if you hit the little green icon, put 100 on the focal length and then zoom out. I really love a 100 millimeter focal length for this kind of thing. So let's start designing that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get a sphere here and go right over here, icosphere, and we're going to subdivide it till it's nice and smooth. So we'll give it about 8 subdivisions, make it smooth, bring him up, scale him down, right click and shade smooth. So that'll be the front portion right there. And then now that it's there, I'm going to hit G on my camera to position him to be in the center. And then we'll go back to rendered view so we can start playing with this design. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Shift A, and I'm going to add a curve, a circle curve, and then go into the geometry of the curve settings and just hit depth, hit that once. We're going to add a material, click new, and give it emission, just like that. And then I'm going to make him green right over here, and then make him kind of bright. So right about there, if we would go back and turn on bloom, you can see it really working. So this part, I'm actually going to go and hop over into cycles to see how the metal is reacting to everything. So we can see this here. So we're going to take this guy, this green boy here, and make him pretty bright. So he's reacting with our whole scene, just like that. Is I'm going to scale him out like this. And then if you see how it's kind of low poly, the circle's kind of low poly, go back into the settings of the curve. On resolution preview, just bring that up right there. Now I'm going to duplicate him, bring it in, duplicate him again, bring him in. And then we can see how that's looking. It's looking pretty cool. Now let's go ahead and I'm going to add a cube, make him super small, bring him over like this. I'm going to hit tab, face select, just going to bring it out, scale him down, and then shoot it down like this. And then I'm going to go in edit mode. So bring one of those. We're going to bring this here and then turn them around, and we're going to make 4 of those. So now I have that. I'm going to say move my camera a little bit to this angle and then move them around till I like the way it looks. So this is how it's looking so far. All I'm going to add now is put them. So I'm going to add here. So make this material new. Make it transmissive, roughness down all the way. We're going to duplicate it, bring it in, and then we're going to make that a simple metallic material and bring down the brightness a little bit here. And then, last thing I'm going to do is on this circle, I'm just going to go and quickly add a solidify material to make the glass look like it's thin. And when I do that, we get a pretty cool render. And there you go. You have a pretty cool render that works really, really cool. In Eevee, again, I'm going to hop over to Eevee and show you. Looks almost the same. Hop on over to bloom. Of course, if you're going to be using bloom in the scene, I would go in and change the brightness of things because right now it's way too blown out. And then I'm going to go to the color management on filmic, go to very high contrast. And right now, of course, in Eevee, it's too bright. You would just go in and play with those brightnesses. And but it looks super, super cool in cycles, which I'm going to be rendering in cycles for this. So there you go. For those of you using cycles, about 300 samples looks pretty good. It's a little bit noisy, but you can AI denoise that if you'd like. And there you go. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something.